Transitions are the point where one turn ends and the next turn starts. For good skiers, this moment between turns is smooth and efficient, almost dance-like, resulting in ample time between gates. It is the less skilled skier, or the skier in trouble, that ends up lengthening this point in the turn, ultimately running out of time. Transitions may be the most important part of the turn. If the old turn blends into the new turn efficiently, turn initiation mechanics become relatively simple. Conversely, if inefficient, the transition takes excessive time, and ineffective technique results in futile tactics. The transition basically sets up or positions the body for what will happen during the rest of the turn. When the transition is proficient, the rest of the turn has a better chance for success. Many technical problems within the turn are not so much problems in themselves, but the ski racer compensating for problems they had in the turn transition. This is a major coaching concern in that the coach would not want to be working on turn mechanics within the turn when the problem can be solved with attention to elements that happened earlier in the turn, or more specifically, at or during the turn transition. Tactical concerns like late pressure, along with lines or arcs that tighten, may also be the result of transition inefficiencies. An average male World Cup GS skier skis at speeds of about 19 meters per second. This means that a male on 190 centimeter or 1.9 meter skis will travel the length of a ski every tenth of a second. In this blink of an eye, a lot must happen. Here is USA's Ted Ligety performing a flawless round GS turn. This is the transition. As you can see, Ted spends one ski length or 1/10 of a second in the transition. If it were to take Ted more than one ski length, say 2 ski lengths, his turn dynamics would change dramatically. The yellow line is where the transition would be if it took 2 ski lengths or 2/10 of a second rather than 1 ski length or 1/10 of a second. If we copy and paste Ted's perfect round turn, having it originate at the 2 ski lengths position rather than at the 1 ski length position, the turn would end up scribed about a half a meter farther away from the gate. A half meter off the line is a large tactical disadvantage. The only other option is to tighten the arc, which will create undesirable external forces and make the next transition even more difficult. We are now going to explain the 5 key components of the turn transition: forward movement of the center of mass, edge release, rotary movement, weight transfer, and extension of the outside leg. 3 of these coincide with the 3 cardinal planes: sagittal, frontal, and horizontal. Essentially, a forward movement of the center of mass, an edge release, and a rotary movement. The forward movement is in the sagittal plane. The edge release is in the frontal plane, and the rotation is in the horizontal plane. As in the explanation of balance movements, or movement solutions, the movements must happen in all 3 planes to be effective. If not, the ski racer will be out of balance in the direction of the deficient plane, and, to be effective, they all must happen within this one critical ski length. The transition is indeed an important piece of the turn. The last 2 components are weight transfer and extension of the outside leg. These are included not just because of their presence in the transition, but they have critical elements that are worthy of mention. The center of mass moves forward during the turn transition. This accomplishes several things. First, it repositions a skier to the middle of the ski. This makes the ski mechanically more efficient to redirect. This is due to the binding placement, which locates the ball of the foot of the skier at the ski's midpoint, creating an equal fore and aft distance on the ski. This binding placement results in an efficient axis of rotation for any redirection the skier needs to impart to the ski. Moving the center mass forward also repositions the skier towards the ball of his foot, where he is in a more athletic or agile position. Lastly, moving the center mass forward creates forward pressure on the ski. This enables the ski tip to establish a path or track for the edge to follow in carving turns. Moving the center mass forward is initially from the ankles. To create a stable base of support in which to move the center mass forward, the ankles need to have considerable tension. Extension of the knee and hip, although difficult to see at times, also assists in moving the center mass forward on the ski. It should be pointed out that this forward component is not a movement by itself and will be combined with other motions to create a complete three-dimensional movement picture. Coaches would be advised to spend time taking apart movements when analyzing an athlete in order to differentiate between cause and effect. Edge release refers to the skier moving from an edge ski to an on-edge ski. While seemingly simple, this edge release or edge change move directly affects the skier's center of mass. There are several ways to release the edge. At the most basic level, edge release starts in the ankles and progressively moves up the skier's kinetic chain. The ankle release is a very slight move and often included with the movement of the knee. Even though the ankle initiates the edge release, its range of movement will be slight. After the ankle, the knee and then the hip, followed by the upper body, move in the direction of the new turn. The farther up the kinetic chain, the larger the range of movement and the easier it is to see. This ankle movement in prepared ski boots is a slight rotation of the subtalar joint. This subtalar movement works best when combined with dorsiflexion. This progressive aspect of the edge release articulates up through the skier's body, similar to swinging a bat. The bat's handle would be analogous to the skier's feet and the bat's tip to the skier's head, which is moving the greatest distance. Releasing the ski edge via the ankle makes sense. This permits the ski to start the turn immediately due to the instantaneous release. When the ski is on its old edge, it cannot be turning. In essence, why have one foot on the brake, or edge, when the other foot is trying to push on the accelerator, or turn? Well, there might be a reason. It has already been mentioned that the upper body must move a very large distance compared to the lower body or ankle. With this in mind, there is another transition method to point out. While the ski is still edged, the upper body, from its previously angulated position, moves diagonally in a combined forward and sideways direction, in essence moving diagonally, splitting the sagittal and frontal plane in one movement. The beginning of this diagonal or directional movement, while the skis are still edged, gives the upper body a head start, which is needed due to its long translation over the skis. In the first method presented, the ankle is the releasing stimulus and the first body part to move. In this second method, the ankle, or more precisely, the edge, is still engaged and the upper body is the releasing stimulus, initiating the crossing move. The end result has an appearance of an old-school A-frame. For this reason, it would be wise not to belabor the notion that parallel shins are a totally desirable end in themselves. The independence of legs, or better phrased, the independence of edging, along with the skier's legs, can be an indication that edging skills are highly developed. Basic edging skills can either be enhanced or limited by stance width. Without adequate room between the legs, the boots can literally get in the way, limiting their lateral range of movement needed for edging. And indeed, without adequate width between the legs, the independence of edging or releasing one edge before the other will never materialize. This is one reason boots need to be correctly canted so the ski racer's athleticness is not inhibited. It could be said that the distance between the skis in GS is equal to the width of the hips. This is a good rule of thumb, but the operative word in the phrase is about. About equal to the width of the hips. Hip width is the optimal width for biomechanical efficiency, although modern ski racers incline the ski to such an extreme angle at the end of the turn, which is the beginning of the next turn, the stance width often widens. While not easy to recenter, this does give increased room for the independence of edging. Let's look at this a bit closer and try to put some perspective on this method before we move on. This leading or initiation with the upper body is an advanced skill. A fundamental component of elite skiing is the separation of body parts. This implies that the athlete can move one or more body part in a positive manner without initiation or influence coming from any other body part. Separation of body parts is one of the fundamentals that separates elite racers from just good racers. Termed separation because the lower body is doing two conflicting movements. We mentioned earlier, in jest, that one foot was on the brake while the other foot was on the accelerator. Just as rubbing your head and patting your stomach is difficult, keeping the ski on edge while moving the upper body in the direction of the new turn is also very difficult. Separation of body parts is only possible after the athlete has a strong possession of the preliminary basic movements involved in the task. The skier needs to first gain the basics of edge release. When this and drills that promote leg independence are mastered, the ski racer will discover independence with regards to edge release strategies. This independence of ski edging is an advanced skill and is a movement that cannot be taught, but merely the consequence of an athlete possessing exceptional edging skills as a result of extensive edging practice. The bottom line is, when coaching, it must be realized that first the skier needs to be able to operate the edges in unison prior to attempting more advanced neuromuscular confusing actions. You cannot rub your head and pat your stomach at the same time until you have learned to rub your head and learn to pat your stomach. Edge release during the transitions can also be accomplished via down unweighting or retraction of the legs. This releases the edges from the snow so the ski can be redirected. This is often seen in the stivet. The converse can also be seen. This method involves up movement with the impetus from the old edged outside ski. We will explain these methods in more detail during the stivet section of turn initiation. So to summarize, one component of the turn transition is the edge release. To get the ski from an edge ski to a flat ski involves moving body parts toward the inside of the new turn. There are several methods: releasing from the ankles, with the upper body, by retracting the legs, and moving up and away from the snow. To say which is better or worse would be irresponsible without knowing the situation and or the environmental conditions. The important takeaway is that the athlete learns and masters edge control so that they can apply the most effective method solely through a reflexive response. The turn transition is when the skis cease going one direction and begin to reorient to the new direction. Other than edge and pressure, which does have a degree of leg rotation, rotation on a grander scale is how the skis will reorient. The entire body can be used to rotate the skis, or the skis can appear to rotate beneath the upper body. While the end result gets the skis from right to left, these two rotation methods have distinctively different forms. Let's look at each of these and their ramifications during the turn transition. The femurs or upper leg bones rotate in the pelvis, specifically in the hip socket. This is a very strong joint with a large range of motion. At turn initiation, this rotation is only possible if two criteria are met. First, the skis need to be in a position so they can rotate, such as flat on the snow or off the snow. Second, there needs to be an impetus to rotate from. This impetus can only be explained by Newton's third law that tells us for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. The reaction we're looking for is the ski rotating. If the ski rotating is the reaction, where is the action? To be on par with Newton, if something moves to the left, something has to move to the right. In this case, if the ski rotates to the left, then there must be an equal and opposite rotation to the right. In a ski turn, this would be the upper body, with the axis of rotation being the head of the femur in the hip socket. Just moments ago, we mentioned that the skis appear to rotate beneath the upper body. This might imply that the upper body is not rotating, which, in the global sense, it is not. It appears not to rotate. That is true if you use an external reference like the trees in the background, but relative to the lower body, the upper body is rotating. It is rotating exactly the same amount that the lower body is rotating. Action to the left has to have an equal action to the right. The other rotation is the entire body rotating as one unit. This rotation must also have an impetus. In this case, the impetus is from the earth or snow. Action imparted against the snow is used to rotate the upper body and the skis in the direction of the new turn. Which is best? Well, it depends on the purpose. If there is a lot of distance and time between the turning impetus and the new edge engagement, then the entire body can be rotated. We will see this in the Stivet section. Conversely, if the turns are close or stacked up, the separation between the lower and upper body is preferable. Since these require different movement mechanics, the on-snow drills used to learn, perfect, and master are different also. To separate the upper and lower body, different types of pivot slips within a corridor are useful, while airplane turns or wedge swing hops could be used to impart the rotation from the snow at the turn transition. Weight transfer is the location of the skier's body weight from one ski to the other. In its most traditional and basic form, it occurs at the turn transition when the skier is switching from the old outside turning ski to the new outside turning ski. Weight transfer is thought to occur at the turn transition, although we must point out that it can and does happen later in the turn. Whether this is a time-saving strategy or merely a result of the athlete going full gas, the technicalities of normal and late should be examined. Normal weight transfer is at turn transition, and the time in which to perform turn transition mechanics is limited. Ideally, at GS speeds, the skier should only use one ski length, or about 1/10 of a second, to diminish everything that it took to end one turn and create everything in which to initiate the new turn. Not much time. Recentering, release the edge, rotate the ski are the gross movements representing the three cardinal planes that need to happen in that one ski length. This is also the time for the weight transfer. The fact that we see so many turns initiated from the new inside ski points out an interesting and important aspect of the turn transition. The weight transfer may not be an essential component of this turn transition critical one ski length. We shouldn't take this as fact, but be aware that the movement of the center mass downhill or toward the inside of the new turn may trump the weight transfer in importance. This is not to say that weight transfer is not important, but we need to keep in mind when coaching that there are instances where the weight transfer can occur at later points in the turn. Lastly, weight transfer might find its most pertinent application as a pressure control mechanism happening throughout the turn to regulate pressure rather than just to apply pressure. After a weight transfer at the turn transition, pressure can continue to be applied to the new outside ski by extension of the outside leg. If on a sufficient edge angle, this early pressure through extension of the outside leg enables the turn to be carved sooner and through more of its arc. Creating this pressure early and above the fall line is difficult because the centrifugal effect of the turn is virtually non-existent at this point, and gravity is working in the opposite direction, essentially canceling out any pressure implied from just the weight transfer. The only way to increase pressure at this point is through extension of the outside leg at or after the weight transfer, while the center of mass is crossing over the skis and toward the inside of the new turn. The timing of the leg extension is critical. This early pressure has to coincide with the skier's center of mass moving in the direction of the new turn, which will ultimately determine the starting edge angle.